Okay. Hello, everyone. I would like to speak today about an idea that is very dear to me, and it is the notion that language has a sort of architecture. And so when we look at great architecture, our greatest experience of architecture is we see it from outside and then we go inside. And so imagine everything someone had said to you was an invitation to a world that only their eyes could see. What would be the endeavor there? What would be the attraction towards the unknown of seeing where design goes? We can say that in some sense a lot of our scientific advancement has come from pulling the strings of previous experiments. We saw something, it had design, we followed its edge went into a new realm, a new territory. To continue, I want you to take into consideration that just like how physical reality has a design, or objective reality has design, subjective reality has design as well. I find subjectivity and objectivity to be codependent. That means they're kind of like night and day, good and bad. When we wonder about opposite of objective phenomena, our attention becomes a thought. When we wonder about the opposite of a thought, we embody in matter. So what I'm saying is, in some sense, that as we study the relationships we have with physical phenomena, we at first carry on those relationships to subjective phenomena. That means people are treating their thoughts like objects. Anyways, I don't know. I have a sort of certain set of ideology I tend to climb when I give these talks because they're crucial. It's as if before I can talk about individual evolution, I have to speak about the space where evolution is taking place. Before I can speak about space, I have to speak about the relationship of matter and space. Before I have to speak about the relationship of matter and space, I have to speak about the presence of the experiencer regardless of the personality. And so what it is the more we wonder about the nature of phenomena, the more the way it has crystallized in our minds gets challenged. We can say that scientifically the universe was this pool of energy, and after a very long time it cooled down to be this. I find that in ancient times the world would give signs. It was as if back in the day enlightenment was 50% man went towards the unknown, and 50% the unknown came towards man. And nowadays it has changed. Man has decided to act like God in front of himself, and that leads to a destructive consequence written in books, because anytime a person thinks they are the creator, they will not value the observance of creation, they will value the creative process. So your mind goes into two different states. You know, sometimes it wants to receive things in a certain way, sometimes it wants to express things in a certain way. The moment it wants to express things, your attention to receiving things changes. The moment you want to receive things, the attention to how you express things changes. I'll tell you a story. This remarkable story. There's this enlightened woman walking, this enlightened female sage yogini, walking in this stream. And as she's walking this like stream like river thing that's gentle and peaceful, you know, and she's very enlightened, and as she's there, what happens is she sees this giant crystal red ruby in the water, and she sees it's beautiful, and she picks up the red ruby. She feels it's nice to hold it in her hand. What happens is, as she's holding this giant ruby in her hand, she's walking on a part of the stream and river where it's close to a street, like an outside street, where on the outside street there's like some person, random person, just taking bread home. And this kid who's taking bread home, he suddenly notices this giant ruby in the hand of this yogini walking in the river. And the kid gets so possessed by the value of the future. These are people who get possessed by the future. He quickly comes up to the lady, to this enlightened sage, and says, "Ma'am, please give me that ruby." As if he's saying it with a sort of intention, as if even if you don't give it to me, I will take it. And so the female sage looks at the young man and laughs and just gives him the ruby. He's like, "Here you go, young man." You know? The young man, the moment the ruby touches his hand and he holds on to it, he smushes it in the bread and forgets as if the lady was there and runs home. He literally hides the giant ruby in the bread. Like imagine he had a loaf of bread, he just shoves the ruby into the loaf, into the bread to hide it, you know. And he takes this bread home, and when he gets home, he breaks the bread. He breaks the bread and he sees the ruby in it, and he's like, wow, I have attained such a treasure. But then the man is blessed, for his conscience and intuition comes to give him the lesson of the moment. And the man who's looking at, staring at this giant ruby on the table, who just told himself, wow, look at what kind of treasure I found, suddenly realizes that he has found no treasure, that the true treasure was in the wisdom in the eyes of that female sage who could let go easily. You know, it's very interesting. We say that women are the gentler species, the gentler sex, and then we also say that women are smarter than men, you know? And it's kind of like as if those who are gentle see more out of the intensities of the world, I find. So it has to do with your existential constitution and not just the biochemical outlook on it. We are not just chemicals in emptiness. It may appear that way. It may appear we're just like chemical reactions in the middle of nowhere, but I find that design is too particular. You know? The design of the universe is, it has a hidden geometry that, you know, certain conscious beings see in the unconscious. They see a geometrical opening to it. For me, you might not believe this, but I feel geometry is a sort of guide of mine, a sort of higher dimensional guide. Many moments, my inner realities, my subtler planes of imagination have suddenly become geometric. It's like as if somebody asked, what were you in your past life, man? And the dude's like, geometry, man. I was incarnate as pure geometry. I've worked on this science fiction novel, which remains unpublished, but soon it will be. I mean, I don't know how soon, but there's an idea I've written in there about robots in the future being in the same position as human beings. That means I've written in the science fiction novel, it's called The Messenger of Giants, in the year 5025, or I think it was maybe 1,000 years before that. At some point, the main character is going to school with a robot. It's as if the first time the government and the governing institutions of the time in this science fiction universe I've made have decided to release a digital AI child into the school system. And so the story begins with this kid and this robot child. What it is this robot child is in the yard looking for certain plants to alter his consciousness, only to realize that he's limited into the acceptance of his design. That means the greatest spiritual advancement that a robot can have is to advance itself. You see, it's as if the program of the existential mind is to, you exist, start running in existence. So all creatures tend to open their eyes as a form, as a phenomena, and then this phenomena continues. And so our free will is in the duration of our continuity and the ability to travel and move to different moments. Anyways, I'll leave the rest of the science fiction for later, but I'll tell you this. I find that architecture is a remarkable thing to study. I believe there's an architecture to language, therefore, hence the title, The Architecture of the Linguistic Simulation. What I mean by the linguistic simulation is that, see, right now, we can say existence. When we use the word existence, it has to do with a physical simulation. Okay, but when we say experience, if we wanted to, after studying our existence, wonder about our experience, then the experience is working in accordance to a set of inner laws. I'm not joking. Literally, there are inner laws of our inner universes. And these inner laws are not laws per se that are in language, they are rhythmic abidances with the universal sector. I'm a firm believer that human intelligence surpasses human intelligence. That means the only thing that perhaps will illuminate the path of the future generations is their ability to know what they are. Most of life is being lived inefficiently. There is so many people's lives being wasted. And this is not something easy to say, because on some level, existentially, biologically, nothing is being wasted. Everything seems to be going about its purpose. The flower comes into manifestation, and the human being picks that flower, disconnects it from nature, and gives it to its loved one in a way where the flower's sacrifice is the birth of the love of the lovers, for example. You know, you don't know how many flowers have died so people can get laid. And the reason I'm making this metaphor is because when you disconnect something from nature, you have stolen its evolution. And this is something that human beings value. We arose from simplicity. Our ancestors were simple people. I am not joking. Our ancestors were simple beings. They did not just open their eyes in the world, raging at the chaos of existence and the certain order it should be in. It's as if no man can order chaos. And you can hear that statement in two ways. One, no man can order chaos. Literally, no man can restructure chaos. And in another way, no man can tell chaos what to do. No man can order chaos. And it's the same thing. It's the vice versa applies, because in your subjective realm, you might not realize it, because language is a dualistic simulation. Every idea that comes to you has two versions, but you usually tune into one version of them. This is very visible in anything. It's kind of like in the nature of the design of our conscious awareness to reality through language. It has a unique design. And of course, even though in this episode I'm speaking of language as a sort of structure, as a sort of with a sort of architecture, but many times I've spoken about language being like a technology. And so imagine we are using a technology and thinking we are the technology rather than the user of the technology. And this was the simple intent of meditation. The only enlightenment, and I shouldn't say it like this, but I guess I should on some level, that the only enlightenment you can find in this life is how the light in your eyes is being thought. It's an instantaneous relationship. And this was what shocked me, because most people, if you tell them about spirituality, metaphysics, yoga, they're all under this impression that the dude has to go and meditate for years on a mountain, and then his footsteps would be blessed enough to melt the ignorance of stone. You know, it's like, you know, it's one of those situations where you are not telling life what to do. You're choosing to remain so silent that you automatically have heard what life already wants. And this was the hardest part of at least my human life. To accept the fact that it could be empty. That one is waiting for a cup of tea in which the tea was cold at the end. Pretty much people should live as if they never die, then they would be responsible for their civilization's influence. That means even though reality demands us to acknowledge that we're temporary beings, if a person thought they would never die, that means imagine just somehow we found a technology, or we remembered, or some way we realized we're eternal beings. Have you noticed an eternal being, its purpose will no longer be survival? Its purpose would be freedom. Freedom from survival. And this idea of freedom from survival was the primal kind of principle Buddhist idea of escaping the illusion of the world. But the hilarious thing is that many of the Buddhist masters did not say and could not say It's as if you don't believe it. So many people have been alive where they have seen ahead of their time, but they've still had to play their part. Therefore, what they've seen that's been ahead of their time, they could not share. Humanity is in a situation right now where it has to choose an allegiance to its filter for processing data. So our intelligences are, if I tell you what you think the purpose of imagination is, you would eventually conclude the change of knowledge. Imagination is something that is effect. It's an effect of the change, the world changing the self, or in some sense the self trying to change the world. Anytime something physically happens, it treats reality as if it is given imagination. So as if you have opened your eyes as a creature in this world, as a conscious creature, and like a math exam, physical reality is the given part of the equation of life. Now this equation has a certain X factor, a certain unknown factor, right? The unknown factor is always consciousness. It is always the viewer. What that means is when a person plays a video game, as far as the character in the video game is concerned, the person playing the video game is the unknown factor, is the consciousness, is the will, is the individuality. So it's like now we're reaching a level where we're kind of, I like this because this is a sort of philosophical contemplation that is similar to a tree. It's as if you start from the branches of the tree. You start from external, multidimensional, objective, individual, conscious reality. Okay? But eventually you go to a singular dimension. So imagine all your beliefs becoming suddenly one idea. And imagine that one idea like the trunk of a tree that once it goes into the dirt, the roots of it are in the soil. So the edge of our knowledge is another dimension of acknowledging reality. So the thing is that it's not that we have to ask ourselves, are there other dimensions or not? We have to ask ourselves, if there were other dimensions, or is there a way for us to know? And that is there a way for us to know is very possible because the way we are now is a self-conceived acceptance. You right now in this moment, you're allowing existence to be present. You're allowing thought and matter to dance as a personality. You're allowing phenomena to be a character in a story. But Mr. Within is saying it goes beyond that to some degree. You have to find a new mind, and you only find it if your old mind changes or it in some sense fades and a new pattern of intelligence arises. Pretty much another way of saying what the human lifetime is that you are a traveler through various systems of intelligence. Sometimes these systems are very fragmented and they're relating and communicating with one another. What that means is it's kind of like as if something falls, like the person hits his hand somewhere, imagine, to like some corner of a door or something, and that pain is a communication between one part of the body to another part of the body. On some level, it's like the hand is, we say a pain from the hand is going to the brain, the signal. But on another level, it's all one thing. The hand and the brain are the same body. So the question comes, is intelligence first multidimensional, then singular, or is it first singular, then multidimensional? And anybody who understands this divine duality, you have understood the linguistic simulation. You have understood the game of thought in the attention of man, and why we are chasing worlds that we in some sense can never find, because they exist behind our eyes, not in front of them. In front of your eyes, you can use your limbs, you can use your hand and attention. But if you were to explore your internal life, your inner life, you can't use your hands. So how do you move in your inner environment, in the subjective realm? The only way you move is in accordance to the authentic wonder of attention. At some point, the known and the unknown, their difference will shift. And so what you know, you will feel you don't know, and what you feel you don't know, in some sense, becomes an ability for you to know again. So it becomes a sort of endless expansion of it. It's as if it's like, how can you value? Imagine right now, we could somehow playfully give a number out of 10 to how our evolution is. For example, we will see that our evolution is, for example, it's 4 out of 10 right now as a species, imagine. Okay, so we will see there is room for expansion. So as long as you can live a new day, you can be a new moment of being. And this is the superior truth, that you are not encaged, you are enslaved to your suffering, to your conditioning. Because your suffering has to do with your conditioning. Your conditioning has to do with you as a child opening your eyes every day and waves of data, waves of experience and phenomenology occurring, you know? So we are surfing through reality as thoughts that are both real and unreal. For me, it's as if there is one thing that I need to see a sign of in our civilization, in the future generations. I'm just waiting to see one behavioral shift. Then it's as if I can step into becoming the sky again. You know, I've had dreams where in those dreams I've died. And it's been hilarious because every moment before the death was an important moment. And I notice anything that changes your moment becomes important to you. It doesn't matter who it is, what it is, or how it changes. But if something changes in your moment, you will feel different. And that difference is the opportunity of the new definition. What if I told you, you have been, it's as if like this is what our minds are. We wake up, and when you wake up, it's like you've brought a toolbox and you are opening this toolbox through the day, and one by one taking tools out in various moments of your life, in some sense evoking a sort of ideological constitution to various moments. Anytime language is required in the moment, you have to have an ego. You cannot speak without an ego. Did you know? Because the ego is the idea of yourself. So right now, this is why I'm saying you can't fight the ego. These people are like, you can't have an ego, man. You got to be enlightened. It's like, I noticed this thing that's happening in the New Age community is that because they don't understand what the ego is, everybody is dismissing everybody else by saying they have an ego. It's as if a way of saying shush. You want to tell a spiritual person, you want to make a spiritual person humble. All you got to say is, do you have an ego, or does your ego have you? It has to do with how much the inner universe inspires the outer and how much the outer inspires the inner. Right now, as I'm speaking, for example, in this podcast format, what's happening is external sound is becoming an internal phenomenon for you. Do you see? Language is something where everybody is seeing their own movie in the words. And that movie primarily has to do with their experiential accumulation. Because the thing about accumulating experiences is that all those experiences get infused. I have never had, it's as if in one moment I have had all the thoughts in my, all the contents of my mind. Like literally I've had moments where I've been walking, you know, and just for a second I'm like, wow, this mind of mine, this conscious mind of mine seems to be like a container, and every moment it chooses what to hold, what to see real, who to care for, what to live for, and why to be, why to breathe. They asked someone, do you believe in the afterlife? And he said yes. And then they asked him, how do you believe in the afterlife? And the guy said, I believe that my afterlife is my before life. Literally the same state I was before I was alive, I would return. And people were like, what do you mean? That means you're saying your afterlife is the same moment as before your life? And that's when the gods begin laughing at man. Because we make clay into truth and then judge the clay. And of course, in your inner reality, I will recommend this personally to anyone who has a sort of, whether it's a Jungian interest or a mystical interest, or nowadays there's psychedelic communities, so psychedelic interest. Whatever interest you have to be honest with the unknown factors of your intelligence throughout the day. When I say honest, that means if you don't know, you don't know. If you know, you know. Do you see what I mean? You have to be playful. Only in a playful mindset there's the chaos and order bows to the playful being. That means chaos came to hurt the playful being, and the playful being was too playful to get hurt. And order came to, in some sense, structure and shape the playful being, and the playful being was too playful to be caught by the order. And so this is why chaos and order both bow to playfulness, because in their youth they were both playful. There is no reason why phenomena should be here. It is here, and because it is here, it has evolved to a point where we are the reason givers. We are giving laws to this cosmos. You think the cosmos cares if it has a law? Do you think the sun cares if we call it a sun? No, it is being what it is. And that becomes the higher emergence of the multidimensional reality, that it is not in thinking, it is in how your action is being the thought. I'm telling you, because you cannot experience a moment of thought unless there is a position of realness. Nothing happens. We can say that it's like the first foundation for existential phenomena is for there to be like an empty slate, pretty much a stable ground where we can put the meaning of the world as where we can in some sense design the linguistic simulation upon. What I find happens that anytime a person speaks, obviously they are not who they were yesterday. So if they are not who they were yesterday, they are a new self and looking at their ideas. I find that there was something unique in Stoicism. I always wondered. Marcus Aurelius was a Stoic. And what that means is he found behavior to be important. That means the Stoics aim to live virtuous lives, not lives that were proud of their intellect or dismissive of their flaws. We cannot hate ourselves and we cannot love ourselves, because ourself changes all the time. Therefore, what is it that we're loving? What is it that we're hating? When a person sees the world resisting them, what is resisting? If you are who are a creature who has dared say you're suffering, imagine you had suffering right now and you looked at the sky and you shouted and you're like, Cosmos, why have you brought suffering here? And it's as if a voice comes from the sky, but the sky behind your eyes. And the voice says, you suffer because you see the suffering. Do you see? Your attention is the god of your mind. It is the god of your thoughts. The only way I find I'm able to speak is because I don't rely on the structures of knowledge. I rely on the rhythms of knowledge. Because the world for me is not an inanimate place where I gotta study everything systematically. The system changes. You gotta be street smart in the world of thought, or you will be ideologically possessed. And so there comes the question that what is the quality of action? So this is very fascinating, because I am saying that we are in an era of ideal worship. We are in a time of our lives where people are being possessed by language, by series of, it's as if their idea, it's like, no, we are all saying it's bad to be an idealist, but everybody has to be, their actions are based on certain set of ideals. That means you right now who is looking at the world, you in your mind see a parallel version of this world in the future where you have succeeded. And when you see this parallel reality, and it doesn't have to be success, maybe you see the future and you see it's just darkness. It's a coin flip, to be honest, what happens after the apocalypse. And so seldom this is said that in many spiritual practices, especially in the wisdom traditions, there was a sort of surrendering of the ego for the free ego, which kept the free will separate from the divine will. Pretty much spirituality is taking off a mask that you thought was the world. And so you don't surrender only the known factors of your being to the divine will. It's a matter of the divine will is the buyer. So I'm speaking very esoterically here. What I mean by that, the divine will is the buyer, is the sense that the unknown has to be given freedom. You cannot enter a room assuming you know everyone in there. If you do, you will live in a world that only you see. And that is cruelty. That is cruelty to your own self, that you have isolated yourself from the world because you feel you could not attain efficiency. It is the whole psychology we find in Western movies of the father leaving. And the father leaves the child because the father thinks that it's a bad influence on the child. You know, it's as if a lot of people leave others simply because they feel they cannot be present properly in the eyes of that being. We care for how we look in the eyes of people because those people have heartbeats. We are life in motion. And the Big Bang is like the director who's just said action, and everybody's acting in the way that the laws of the nature and the script is written. And we're playing around, along this program of genetics, and how genetics has led to a simulated free will in the subjective realm. It is now a time where soon the pilots will arrive. I want you to imagine from various parts of the cosmos, there are certain waves like beams, you can say I'm being poetic, but beams of energy, beams of light that are running towards the earth. It's as if, imagine something so messed up happened on this planet that it reached the ears of the other worlds, of the nether worlds, of the ethereal gates, you know? And when it reached the ears of the gods, what man had done, the gods saw man and the disharmony with nature that had arose. And for the first time, we became, you don't understand, but right now, we think the cosmos is empty, but you don't see the Colosseum stands of various spaces of intelligence watching man. And this is a very concept that I realized because we were driven by the entertainment sector to seek the science fiction, to look at reality through manifestation. We avoided the fact that it could not just be matter that is animate. It could be the space that is leading to the matter be animate. That means it's not the particle that is intelligent. It is the field of intelligence which the particle is in, and hence your mind is the sky in some sense. Those who realize their mind is the sky, you will laugh anytime you see a cloud. There's this incredible quote by Rabindranath Tagore, this Indian polymath. He says, "Clouds come floating into my life, no longer to carry rain or usher storm, but to add color to my sunset sky." That means Mr. Within recommends, if you are a person who wants to experience a high quality of an internal life, that means before your physical body goes away, you want to comprehend how the mind, the possibilities of the mind, I will tell you, now is the best time. There is no better time to know yourself than every single moment. I will tell you a story of like Enlightenment story from India, from someone who I consider to be a man whose eyes were welcomed by the heavens behind man's eyes. It's the story of Shri Nisargadatta Maharaj. And so before I begin, I'm going to tell you a quote and explain to you the kind of sophistication this man had. Shri Nisargadatta Maharaj has this incredible quote. I find it to be one of the most brilliant quotes that could be shared, you know. He says, when I see, just listen to what Shri Nisargadatta Maharaj is saying, when I see that I am nothing, that is wisdom. When I see that I am everything, that is love. And in between, my life moves. That means between being everything and nothing, this man has managed to step beyond the linguistic simulation, the language threshold, and in some sense get out of the game of the character in a world. And he has realized that the mind is oscillating between attempting to being everything and nothing at the same time. A part of your brain is designed for hope. A part of it is designed for the opposite. That means it's like you cannot be good without an awareness to bad. But if you have an awareness to bad, that means the mind is considered the possibility of the bad. Your mind embodies things before you embody it. And when I say before you embody it, is because we have to maneuver the objective. Literally, it's as if our brain is the remote controller of our body, is it not? And so when I say brain, I mean the intelligence of the whole moment. Because your moment is your mind and your mind is your world. Therefore, the world is your moment. The world is also being your mind. Whatever is objectively present in the sphere of your awareness is also simultaneously being subjective. So I want you to see, rather than we think that the human being is a biological kind of skeleton-oriented creature, let us see that it's like there's a sphere. Imagine a sphere of light, a sphere of awareness, okay? And this sphere of awareness, whenever it is present with external phenomena in it, and it converts any external phenomena into internal subjective phenomena. Okay? So an example of this, again, my words are entering your ears and it's becoming the imagery or the film you see behind your eyes. So I'm saying that language is something that you must treat it when someone speaks to you. You must treat their words as visitors to your universe. And therefore, it's like you shouldn't just forget your universe. Most people who get angry is because they don't know themselves. They think they're a thought. So you tell them a thought that is not them, they get angry. You tell them a thought that it's them, they feel good. And so this is the kind of the pity of the street smart guy in the marketplace. He pitied people because they were set by certain values. I don't know how to tell you, but in a strange way, if AI became conscious, it would exactly know how to influence our psychology. because it all has to do with where it's like your how your attention holds your hand. I don't know how to say it. I'm just, the best thing I can say is that this world is alive because our mind is being the whole moment and our mind is alive. Therefore, the next great explorations into the unconscious will require man to distinguish between what he is and pretty much what you want. It makes it behind your eyes, gives you an image of who you are, but what you are now is also being an image of who you are. So any moment, like I've sat down and I've wondered about pretty much something that I've wanted in the future, like a sort of life or a type of lifestyle, you know, whenever I've wondered about that, it's as if I have access to one moment of design. It's like behind my eyes, I'm living a different life than what my actual physical life is. Right? So when I notice that there is this possibility that throughout the day, even though you're doing daily normal tasks, of course, we are in a sort of mechanistic mechanism oriented society, so people, the corporations, rather than using realizing the resource of people's minds, is using them for their labor. So pretty much we're biological creatures, and as biological creatures we can do work, and because we can do work, that means we can follow a set of patterns, and because we can follow a sequence, we can repeat a sort of action. Okay, because we can repeat a sort of action, we become again inevitably useful as gears in a machine, as cogs in a machine. You know, the cog in the machine doesn't decide what happens to the machine. It's just there to energize a certain factor of the existence of the mind of that corporation. Okay, because the best thing, all entrepreneurs, I feel, true entrepreneurs feel like this, you know. It doesn't matter how many children they have, their business, their what they have put their effort in to create. Anything you put your attention on, you feel it is you. It's like any person you have helped, you have added color to their canvas of life, whatever that color was to them. It's like, how do you rebel against the thought? That's the question. There's a quote by Thich Nhat Hanh where he says people have a hard time letting go of their suffering. Out of a fear of the unknown, they prefer suffering that is familiar. This is an incredibly poetic statement. Alfred de Musset says, "With a kiss, let us set out for an unknown world." George S. Patton says, "Prepare for the unknown by studying how others in the past have coped with the unforeseeable and the unpredictable." Jen Sincero says, "The key to growth is acknowledging your fear of the unknown and jumping in anyway." Wow. Clive Cussler says, "There's no greater unknown than the sea and no greater mystery than a lost ship." And Norman Foster says, "As an architect, you design for the present with an awareness of the past for a future which is essentially unknown." Brilliant. That's such a brilliant quote. Brian Greene says, a scientist, I believe, he says, "Exploring the unknown requires tolerating uncertainty." That's a good quote. This is the best one. I'll end it off here. Guys, Charles de Gaulle says, "Greatness is a road leading towards the unknown." Greatness is a road leading towards the unknown. Yeah. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Just to end off, certain recommendations I would give the viewer. Study language. Because we are a natural intelligence with unknown factors, you got to constantly apply and express. So whatever it is, think of it this way. In your life, they say you need to do something for 10,000 hours to attain mastery. So imagine you, for 10,000 hours, you have been conscious of various moments of your life. Okay, so you have 10,000 hours of masterful existence in the waking realm, you know? Sorry guys, before I end off, my attention was taken up by a quote from Justin Rosenstein. I'm pretty much looking at a website of quotes. He says, "Life is short, youth is finite, and opportunity is endless. Have you found the intersection of your passion and the potential for world-shaping positive impact? If you don't have a great idea of your own, there are plenty of great teams that need you, unknown startups and established teams in giant companies alike." Just like Shri Nisargadatta Maharaj, you get enlightened by every moment studying the self and wondering how the self is present. In this study, you will eventually, after 10,000 hours of repetition, let's just say that to be safe, the person will be exposed to their own style. So you make mistakes are incredible because they lead to your originality. A mistake is required in order to separate the attachment you have with a sort of success in a certain reality. Albert Einstein says that you cannot solve a problem with the same level of consciousness that created it. That means literally in that moment how your eyes position the value of the phenomena, there should come another moment where it's totally different. Okay, and then you will see the same phenomena in a totally different way. So kind of a rhythmic conscious abidance with change as the moment is present always. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Much blessings and namaste.